This is not my first encounter with Frieda McFadden, but it might be my last. That was a little bit dramatic. I don't know if this would really be a make or break it moment for me because I do get FOMO and Frieda McFadden's books are very popular and now they're starting to make it into the Goodreads Choice Awards more often. So even if I hate this book, I can't guarantee I'll never read from her again, but I'm starting to have accumulated a decent amount of reading her backlist. These are the 4 books that I have read from Frieda McFadden in the past. I have read The Housemaid and the sequel, The Housemaid's Secret. I actually have a video where I talked about these at length and answered the question if it's worth reading the sequel. And now there's another book coming out in this series that I am not sure if I'm going to read or not. How I feel about this book, The Teacher, may inform some of that. I did really like The Housemaid. This was the first thing I read from Frieda McFadden. I gave it a 5-star. I thought The Housemaid's Secret was okay. I gave it a 3.5. I've read Never Lie, which I thought was fine, and I gave a 3-star. And then I read The Coworker recently for the Goodreads Choice Awards in 2023, and I hated this and gave it a 1-star. So I've had a mixed bag of my experience with Frieda McFadden's works, and I'm just not sure how much I want to keep picking up her new releases, especially because she is spitting these books out. They are coming out fast. Most recently, we have The Teacher, and this is a book I've been very hesitant to pick up just because of the synopsis of it. I just don't know if this is going to be something that I will enjoy. I'm a little bit worried it could be another 1-star, but I want to form an opinion on it, and what better way to do that than to bring you along with me. It is much later in the evening. I have showered, I have face masked, and I have read 50 pages of The Teacher. Usually with Frieda McFadden books, there is an unput-downable quality to them that makes me fly through them, even if I'm not particularly enjoying them. But I'm not gonna lie, these first 50 pages were a little bit of a struggle for me to even get 50 pages in, so that is not a good first sign. So far in this story, we're following 2 main perspectives. We have Eve, who is a teacher. She is married to an English teacher, she's a math teacher, and they teach at a high school together. Her personality is ridiculously annoying. I don't know what it is with Frieda McFadden and writing about women's high heels, but that was very prominent in The Coworker, and it's been very prominent in this so far. Outwardly, their marriage looks nice. Inwardly, Eve wishes they would both get hit by a truck and die. Then you have Addie, who is one of these students at the high school, and she is kind of an outcast right now because of something that happened last year. There is not a lot of clarity on what that is, but it has something to do with another male teacher who has since been suspended / fired / forced into quitting basically because of some accusations that were made against him. And Eve, the teacher, really liked that guy. And a lot of people did apparently, so people think Addie's a liar. And that's kind of all we know from the first 50 pages. It's possible this will just be an early hurdle of me getting back into Frieda McFadden's writing style. I'm hoping that's all it is. But right now, it's a little bit annoying. Good morning. It is the next day, and I read a lot of The Teacher last night. I got over 50% of the way through. I'm at page 216, which is chapter 45 for those of you following along at home. I am changing my opinions on Frieda McFadden and her writing. It's shifting for sure, especially with this book. Really, The Coworker is to blame. That was the first book that made me start to look at her books in a different light. Before, if you would ask me about Frieda McFadden, I would say, oh my gosh, they're so readable, fast-paced, fun, popcorn thriller, easy to read. I think that I read these books so quickly because nothing's happening, and I'm just like, surely we gotta get to the end. Something's gotta be happening, because that's what's happening with this book this far in. My notes that I wrote last night when I reached this point are as follows. And these are non-spoilery. We're gonna talk non-spoilery for a bit, and then I'm gonna get into spoilers. So you're safe if you don't want the spoilers. This is a big nothing burger so far. Addie's teenage school drama, over-the-top bullying. It feels like nothing is developing, and I read so much filler. Also, the words boobalicious waitress were used, and I don't know how to get past that. The writing is just not good. It just reads quickly, but nothing's happening. I'm just like, my God, I just keep watching Addie going to school, living her teenage life, being bullied, struggling, and watching Eve be unhappy in her marriage, going to work. And there are other things happening, but I'm not going to spoil those. But generally, it's just like, wow, what's going on? We're just being strung along for this really long ride. And that's why I wanted to get a little more than 50% of the way through, just in case there was going to be some kind of major twist or reveal right around this spot, so that I would feel like I reached something. And I even was flipping forward, like, is a part 2 coming? Is someone, like, a new perspective going to come into the fold? Nothing. So yikes. It's not that I am actively like hating what I'm reading. It's just really, really boring. Nothing's happening. It's not written super well, and it doesn't feel like it's really building to much. At this point, there has been one reveal. Part of it was surprising, part of it wasn't, but it doesn't really feel like things are moving and grooving the way I want them to be, so I'm a little bit disappointed right now. I will probably just finish this all in one go. I also got the audiobook, so I might just listen to that throughout the day, unless something drastic happens where I want to update you in that moment, but it's not looking like that's going to happen. So that is my midway update, the non-spoilery edition. I do want to jump into some spoilers, so I'll pop a spoiler banner on the screen, and I'll put it in the chapters down below so you can skip this part if you would like. I'm just going to tell you all the things that happen in this book in case you just want the full spoilers, because it's really easy to talk through quickly because not a lot is happening. Let's lay out all of our characters for you. We have Eve Bennett. She is our main character, who is a math teacher, a high school math teacher, and she is married to Nate Bennett. He teaches high school English at the same high school. The main student you're following is Adeline, who goes by Addie Severson. She was the student responsible for this other teacher named Art Tuttle. His name's Arthur. He goes by Art. No longer being with the school. He basically got forced out and he had to quit because there were rumors going on about their relationship. Addie's dad was an alcoholic, drunk guy who died at the bottom of the stairs last year when all this Art Tuttle stuff was going on. There will be a reveal around that, but let me introduce some other characters first. We have Kenzie Montgomery. She is the it girl at the school. She is a bully and she is being really mean to Addie. Hudson Jankowski. He is a former friend of Addie's. Now he is associated with Kenzie, and there's a rift between them. And the reason there's a rift between them, here's the reveal that's coming along. This reveal happened at page 132. It is that Hudson sort of helped Addie kill her father. That is why they're kind of on the outs, because things are a little awkward. Essentially, Addie's dad was abusive and mean. Hudson was over at her house. The dad was screaming at her. Hudson jumped in, got in a little scuffle with the dad, and then Addie actually pushed her dad down the stairs, and then her and Hudson decided to go over to Hudson's house, act like they weren't there, and it all just got washed away as it being a drunk guy falling down the stairs. The other character to introduce is this guy named Jay, who is a shoes salesman, and Eve is having an affair with him. She goes to the shoe store all the time, and they hook up in the shoe closet. I said earlier that I don't know what it is that Miss Frieda McFadden has with women's high heels, but there's clearly something. Like, she clearly has a deep admiration for them, because I remember a lot of description in the red high heels and the coworker and them click-clacking on the floor. I think that's even the cover of the book, is a woman's high heel. In this book, Eve is obsessed with high heels. She's like secretly hiding them from her husband, and she is having an affair with a shoe salesman. So there's something going on there. As for what has happened in the book so far, you're going back and forth between Addie and Eve's perspective. Addie is going to school. She's getting bullied by Kenzie. She is in both Mr. and Mrs. Bennett's classes. She's struggling in math, but she is excelling in English, which is what Mr. Bennett teaches, and they start to have an affair. The affair begins around page 179, where Nate has been kind of taking Addie in a little bit. She's writing poetry. He's like, your poetry's so good. You're amazing. And at one point he hugs her. He gets a boner, and then they kiss for the first time, and now they go hook up in the photography closet during school. Meanwhile, Eve is having her affair with Jay, the shoe salesman. He gives her a pair of shoes for her birthday. They are chatting on this app that's basically Snapchat, but they call it Snap something else, but it's an app where messages disappear. But now that Nate has started to have these feelings and things for Addie, he is starting to be more sexually interested in his wife, Eve, at home. home, and so she's starting to pick up on that. And then one night they have some friends over, and then it's late at the night, and Eve sees Addie in their front yard, and she's getting freaked out by that. Eve is also dealing with some stuff with Addie at school, where Addie cheated on a test, and she was going to report her, but Nate talked her out of reporting her. But now she's seeing her in her yard, and she's like, okay, I'm gonna have to report her to the principal. Things are getting weird. I'm already worried about her because she got this Art guy kicked out of here, and Art was Eve's mentor. She really liked him. She runs into him in the grocery store early on in the book, and he tells her like, hey, be careful of Addie. So there's a little bit of ominous energy around that. Also, Kenzie's been bullying Addie, and so Addie breaks into her house. Doesn't really do much. She does break a trinket, but that's really all that happens so far. So you do get the sense that Addie is a little bit messed up because she killed her father. She's breaking into Kenzie's house. And now she's having an affair with a teacher, but I don't really blame her for that one because he's the adult in the situation and he's clearly grooming her. So that's where we're at. I don't really love reading the student-teacher affair portion of this. It's really strange because characters feel so different from other people's perspectives. So when you're reading from Eve's perspective of what Nate is like, it seems like this totally different character than Addie's perspective on what Nate is like, which makes sense because of course they'd see them in different ways, but it does feel a little bit disruptive because you're like, well, is he a jerk or is he this kind of guy and overly romantic? Either way, it's gross because Addie is like 15, 16 in the book, and I don't know where it's going. I don't know where it's going. Addie claims this whole time she never had an affair with Art Tuttle. I don't know if that's the truth or what's the situation. There's got to be something coming, some kind of reveal. I'm like, can we not trust Nate? Is Nate like only hooking up with Addie to get something to happen? I don't know. But that's everything that's happening so far, and I'm just ready to see how it ends. Holy guacamole, I finished it. I literally didn't move. I sat right here, I just finished the book. It went by so fast, and then all of a sudden it was done. I'm so upset. I'm so upset. This was not good. This is another 1 star for me. This is 2 1-stars back to back from Frieda McFadden in a row, and I am officially taking a break. I'm officially taking a break. I cannot just pick up her books for fun anymore. I've been betrayed too many times, and I will, from now on until further notice, only be picking up her books if there's some kind of forcing function, such as being in the Goodreads Choice Awards, if I'm reading the nominees. Maybe if I'm feeling crazy, I'll end up reading that new book coming out in the Housemaids trilogy, because at least I've enjoyed those books. Goodness gracious. These blue and red books. It's something with the ones that look blue and red. Not good. This was not a good book. I don't really know what else I can tell you about this book without spoiling it. I really want to talk about spoilers and just get some stuff off of my chest, but I'll finish you out here if you want the non-spoilery experience. I can't recommend this. I don't think it's written well. I feel like it reads like a teenage girl's diary. Of course, one of the perspectives is a teenage girl, but even reading from the adult perspective, it just is not great writing. Not a lot happens in the story. It drags on, and I feel like Frieda McFadden's known for really good plot twists, and there's not even great plot twists in here. At the very end, there's this crazy reveal, but it's meaningless. Like, it doesn't add anything to the story. It's just like, why did you do that sort of thing? I mean, it adds meaning to the story because it makes you look at things a little bit differently, but it just, like, it didn't need to happen. I don't know. So can't say I recommend this. Didn't have a great time with it. And if you are a person who wants to read the Goodreads Choice Awards nominees in the mystery thriller category, I will go ahead and say I'm sorry because you're gonna end up having to read this, I'm sure. I'm sure it's gonna make it in there and you're not gonna have a good time. Now for some spoilery ranting. Let's first catch up on everything that happened since we last spoke. So when I last caught up with you, Eve saw Addie outside their house at night. She ends up not reporting it, and then here's what happens from there. I'm referencing all my notes. Eve ends up catching Nate and Addie kissing, but they don't know that she caught them. She saw them in his room through the window. And so later that night, she confronts him, asks him for a divorce, asks him to stop talking with Addie, and asks him to resign from teaching children. She's like, you can teach adults, but you don't need to be teaching children anymore. He does all of that. Addie gets really upset. Addie comes to break into Eve's house. Nate is now gone, and Addie wants to try to talk some sense into Eve. Like, you don't understand, we're soulmates. They get in a fight. It does not go well. So Addie ends up hitting Eve over the head with a frying pan, and now Eve is on the floor blood everywhere, doesn't know what to do. So what does she do? She calls Nate and says, please come over. Nate says, great, let's bury her body together. You go upstairs and get the sheet. So Addie goes upstairs to get the sheet. While she's gone, Eve wakes up and Nate strangles her to death. Then we go into part 2 of the story. This happens at page 276. Nate and Addie drive Eve's body to a pumpkin patch to bury her. Nate abandons Addie while they are there. She is digging the grave and he's like, oh, I gotta go get something from the trunk, and he just leaves her there. So Addie ends up calling Hudson. Remember, that's her friend from the high school who she used to be friends with, but she's not really close with anymore. She has no one else to call, so she calls him and he ends up helping her. He comes and picks her up. The next morning, Nate is showering and he finds a pair of Eve's shoes in the shower. The shoes are everywhere in the second half of this book. It was so funny to me how prevalent the shoes were. Nate decides it's time to call the cops and say like, oh my God, my wife's missing. I don't know what's happening. Finds another pair of shoes in the kitchen. So the shoes keep populating. Then the detective comes into the story, starts talking to Addie. The detective has this note, this angry note. It's like, it's not worth even getting into, but basically the detective starts to think like, what's going on here with Addie and Nate? And then Addie decides like, I'm just gonna deny everything because Nate said deny everything and we'll deal with it. But Nate's not talking to Addie anymore now. And then Kenzie ends up showing up to Addie's house. Remember, Kenzie's the bully and she is like, her hair's wet from the rain and she's all upset. And Kenzie tells Addie, I know you're sleeping with Mr. Bennett because I have been too, since I was a freshman in high school at 14 years old. And I know this because I saw a poem fall out of your papers when I knocked them on the ground and I saw it was a poem and he wrote that poem for me. So Kenzie talks Addie into going to the police together. And that is when they say like, hey, we've been having an affair with this teacher. Nate then finds a jack-o'-lantern and a raven in his kitchen. This is important because The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe is his favorite poem, and this seems like it would be something Eve would do. So he's like, oh my God, is Eve alive? I've got to go back to that pumpkin patch, make sure she's still buried in the ground. He goes, he finds the hole is empty. Boom, he gets hit over the head. He wakes up and turns out, here's what happened. Eve actually woke up in the grave and was able to bury herself out because Addie buried her in leaves, not dirt. You find out later that was intentional, sort of. So Eve, back from the dead twice now. When Eve escaped the grave, she called Jay, the guy she's been having the affair with, remember, from the shoe store, and says, my husband tried to kill me, come help me. And he comes and helps her. And she's like, I don't want to go to the cops. I want to do this my own way. So she's been tormenting him for the past couple of days with Jay. And she decides in that moment, I want to kill this MFer, and ties him up, puts him in the hole, and her and Jay bury him alive together. Then we get into the epilogue, and here's where we learn some things. First, we learn that Nate was Eve's teacher when she was 15, and that poem that Addie thought was written for her, but turns out he actually wrote it for Kenzie. It turns out that that poem was actually written for Eve back when she was 15 and he was her teacher. So he's been having inappropriate relationships with students forever. Who knows if she was even the first? Maybe that poem was originally for someone else. He really should figure out how to write a new poem. Why would you leave all your evidence out like this? And then we get the final reveal of the book on page 377, which is absolutely absurd. I cannot believe it's just all of a sudden revealed to you, because we're in the epilogue and now we're seeing Addie's back in school. They dropped the investigation. They just think the guy's gone, but he's really dead. Eve never corroborated that Addie tried to attack her. So everyone's free, scot-free, everyone's good to go. Addie is friends with Hudson again. And as they're walking away, one of his football friends says bye to him. Is like, bye, Jay, because his last name is like Jibagowski or something. So they call him Jay. So it turns out the guy that Eve was having an affair with, who we've known as Jay, this guy who works at the shoe store, who also helped her bury her husband alive, is Hudson, which is Addie's friend, who she's kind of like in a relationship with now, who also helped her kill her dad, and then also came and picked her up when she got abandoned at the pumpkin patch. So he's been at the center of all of these murders. And he knows everything, I guess. What was the point of that? I don't know. To be surprising, I guess. But also, that means Eve has been having an affair with a student. What the heck? I guess even my camera's had enough because my battery just died. But anyway, that's a wrap on the teacher. That's everything that happened. And I don't know what the point of that last plot twist is, other than like, okay, it's a shock value, but now you're just like, well, dang, Eve was sleeping with a student the whole time too. No one really gets punished the way they should. Everything's kind of messed up. Like, Eve was having an affair with a student that never gets found out. Addie has now killed multiple people. No punishment for that. I guess Nate ends up buried alive in the ground, which seems good because he's been a bad person. But then we've got this Hudson / Jay who is sleeping with both of them as well. And like, I don't know. It was very anticlimactic for me. That last reveal that Hudson and Jay are the same person did shock me, but it didn't make me like feel good in any way. You know, it wasn't like a satisfying, oh my gosh, that slipped under my radar. It was just like, huh? Why? Weird? What? Okay, I guess. I will say the only thing I'll give this book a little bit of credit for is Frieda McFadden made it clear that she does not condone student-teacher relationships, which like bare minimum, okay, that's good to like not condone that. But there's several moments in here where it's said through multiple characters' perspectives that this is not Addie's fault that she was groomed by Nate, that he was the adult in the situation and she was groomed and she was brainwashed. Even Eve is like, it's not your fault, Addie, you're just naive and I know this can happen. And she especially does because it happened to her when she was also younger. So I'll give it that at least it made a point to be like, Addie's groomed, she's not this evil, manipulative girl going around stealing people's husbands, which, you know, that never really got resolved. We never really found out what happened with the teacher that quit last year, Art Tuttle. You find out that Addie was stalking him. You don't know why. You don't know what happened there. You don't get any resolution for that, which is one of the first things that's opened up in the book. So how are you going to just leave us hanging like that? Anyway, that's all the energy I have for this book. That's all I can give it. This was disappointing, but I guess I should have known I'd end up here all along. Let me know in the comments down below if you have read The Teacher and let me know what you think of it. If you're planning on including any spoilers, make sure you just put like in all capital letters spoilers and maybe skip a couple lines so people can avoid those comments if they want to. But I am happy to chat about it all down below. And if you're interested in seeing some of my other Frieda McFadden content, I will have those videos linked down below as well, so you can go check those out. But that is it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye.